Welcome everyone to Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I'll be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about well-being. And when we think about the idea of well-being, it's not something that's a quick fix. Sometimes we have to really look deep in what we need to do, what needs to be changed. And oftentimes we look for a cover-up. We look for something on the surface level, whether it be drugs, alcohol, it could be sex, things like that. We cover up what is truly wrong, and what we would like to fix is on the deep levels. It's not on the surface level. When we look at ourselves, we have to ask ourselves a serious question. Are we being well? Are we doing what we need to do? We find places that we become complacent in. We find places that can use some healing or some repair. But yet, we just scrum it up to not having enough time or not having enough knowledge or not being in the sense of despair quite yet, so we make the changes. Oftentimes, many people wait for trauma. Trauma is going to be one of the best incentives for someone to change, but it's actually the worst incentive for you to change. Why do you have to wait for something bad to happen in your life in order for you to make a change? You shouldn't. You should find a reason to make that change today. And it doesn't have to be a big one. It could be a small micro step into the right direction. Learning how to breathe, learning how to be mindful, learning where you are today, and then maybe asking yourself the question, where would you like to be? And then you begin that journey, you begin that process, because that process is going to help you understand who you are, and where you would like to be. Because the process of well-being is just the beginning of who you can be. So let's learn how to be better, how to be well, with my guest, Maria Mays. Welcome, Maria Mays, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Michael. And thank you to your audience for giving us the space in their days.
I love your energy. As soon as I heard your voice, I said, she's so calming. And I know this episode is going to be very calming to the soul, and it's going to be touching the hearts of a lot of people in the audience, because what you do as a well-being coach is that you do more than just help people with their well-being. It's a total package. So without me kind of going into all the work you do, can you please explain the work you do as a well-being coach and then how you help people?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll start out maybe by posing a question to you in the audience. And that is, if you look at yourself, at your being, are you a well-being? And so with that, something came to mind. Maybe what came to mind was physical. Maybe what came to mind was mental, or maybe what came to mind is spiritual. We see, and I say we in that myself, as well as those who've trained me, my trainings through Deepak Chopra's Chopra Global Organization, we see it as all connected, right? It's a holistic approach in that if I'm physically super fit, but I am riddled with anxiety up here, which I've been there, done that before, I don't see that as being well personally, right? If I'm mentally sharp and calm, yet I have a lot of excess physical weight. And as a result, that has manifested now as health issues, chronic disease, etc. Is that well? So, and spiritually, you can be fit and not have much anxiety, let's say, or not have much mental fluctuation of the mind, but maybe there is something that feels missing. Maybe there's a sense of purpose that you're lacking, or connection to just the world around you and the universe and the connectedness of us all. That doesn't resonate, or just something feels missing there. So again, are you a well-being in that regard? So I ask that question because it means something different for everybody. Everybody's definition of well-being is different. Mine happens to be joy. So if I'm living a joyous life, that means that I have inner peace, because I can't have one without the other on a regular basis, right? A baseline of that. So it's something that, maybe as your audience is listening, their wheels are probably turning right now, just thinking about, okay, what does well-being mean to me? So lots of definitions, but truly I see it as that whole circle, mind, body, spirit, all being in a place where the baseline is that energy, that joyous nature, that inner calm. So
I love the idea about asking a question, where we ask ourselves a question, am I well-being, or am I happy, or am I satisfied, or whatever that question is. And we can start to really look deep into ourselves. Oftentimes, I think people are quick to say, I'm doing fine, I'm doing okay. If I ask how are you doing, Maria? I'm doing well. I'm doing okay.
Fine. Yeah.
Really, maybe you might be having the worst day of your week. And it might just be because you're just overwhelmed and stressed with work, or maybe there is some type of grief or trauma in your life and you're trying to deal and work through that. I find that many times we become so single track minded where we focus on something so intently. So, for example, if my friend doesn't like me, that's all I'm thinking about. Why don't they like me? I thought we were really good. Or if you're maybe in your career and your boss says, hey, we need to have a meeting. And now you're thinking, is he going to fire me or she's going to fire me? And you just have that anxiety, I guess you can say. Why do you think so many people, especially here in the West, we give ourselves that single track mind where we always focus on one thing so intently, but also we focus it in a negative manner rather than a positive manner?
Well, I think there's two things that come into play there. One is that we're born as humans with a negativity bias, right? We're wired. Our nervous system is wired such that if we look at, ancestral backgrounds, that we were always on alert looking for danger, right? That's how we are wired to look at, is this a situation where I'm in danger? Is there, an animal coming here? We're talking back in the caveman days, right? But what's happened is through our evolution, right, as a species, even though we've advanced so much, that's a wiring. It's hardwired in our brain. And so today, maybe it's not a saber-toothed tiger that is causing fear. Maybe it's the work stress. Maybe it's the grades. Maybe it's whatever it might be in someone's sphere of influence. And so I think it's a combination of wiring, right, as beings in this human body, right? And then it's also conditioning and cultural. So I think we really have an opportunity for this generation coming up right now. Those of us raising children, and even if you don't have children of your own, having them in your sphere, we have not only an opportunity, but a responsibility really to change the paradigm here a little bit. So I'm 46, right? And so I was raised with a generation that really worked hard, right? That whole coming out of that era of really working hard. I was raised to get the job done, to get good grades, to get into college, to get a good career, to get, the house, the this, keep your credit score high, all this stuff. And so what happens is we end up on this hamster wheel of productivity. At least that's where I found myself. When you're in that constant state of doing, it is keeping you in the sympathetic side of your nervous system that is in that mobilization. And so what happens is we tend to then find ourselves in a habit, right? And so we don't even realize we're doing it. I didn't know I was doing it for years until I literally hit a wall. And so you can only do that for so long without taking time out of your day to pause, to recenter, to connect. So I think to answer your question, it was kind of a long-winded variation of it, but combination of the way we're wired physiologically, as well as the culture in which we were born into. And I think there is an opportunity now with a brewing, if you will, that I'm seeing a bubbling or rising to the top of this consciousness that's starting to elevate a little bit as a result of the world pausing, right? So that was, I see a silver lining, one of the silver linings for me personally, as well as I think collectively of the pandemic, in that when everything was pressed to pause, right, we had to stop for a moment. Now I'm seeing things have transitioned, a lot of us jumping right back in and maybe trying to make up for lost time, working even harder, right? Or can we really leverage that slower speed, that throttling back a little bit on the go, go, go to really make sure we're living with intention and being mindfully aware of all that we do?
I want to talk to you about what you just said. You said that we slow down to a stop almost, right? And I can see the pros and the cons to it. But I want to just have a conversation with you. This is definitely not me picking a side. This is just me giving a viewpoint that might be different to different audience members, where one person can see that stopping as, oh my goodness, I'm stopping. I want to be moving. I want to be doing something. I'm going stir crazy. Versus someone saying, okay, I need this. It's so stressful out there. There's so much anxiety. There's so much fear. There's so much unknown, especially during the pandemic, where people felt safer doing that. With me, I remember the gym had closed and a lot of the things that I would do in my day were starting to change. And I'm all about change. So it's just like, you just have to do a pivot. But for many people, that pivot was, I don't know what to do. I'm freezing. So it's kind of like they froze. That fear stopped them completely in their tracks. But then at the same time, was that fear helpful for them? So I kind of want to get maybe your take on the whole stopping of the pandemic, the pros and the cons.
For me, I'll just share kind of a personal antidote and then look at it kind of as a collective. And so I'm a tough learner. So I usually have to get taught a lesson a few times before I'm really ready to listen. And that was true of me stepping into this world of coaching and well-being. And so I have lived with generalized anxiety disorder for most of my life. So my symptoms started probably around the age 2, but didn't really get manifest fully or get diagnosed until my early 30s. And so I had the opportunity, after being treated in several different facets through medication and otherwise, the opportunity to seek out alternatives, right? And so I started seeking out alternatives to manage my anxiety as well as a nervous system dysfunction. And that's what led me down to the path of first with breath work and then yoga and subsequently Ayurveda and meditation. And so for me, I feel like I was gifted finding these tools and having resourced myself prior to the pandemic hitting, because I had created a lifestyle such where I had found that baseline of inner peace. And let me tell you, it was a long journey. That's why I'm doing the work I'm doing now, because I don't want people to go have such a long time frame for that, right? So as the pandemic hit the US, I lost my job. So I was in the technology world, I was in the software world, and the company I was working for was based out of another country. They decided to pull out of the US. So I had to lay off the whole team that was working for me and then was laid off myself. And it presented me with this opportunity where I could have really been succumbed to the fear, right? The unknowns, not the best time to be, losing income. Or I could look at it as, what's that next door that's going to open? And so myself, as that same individual, had that happened a few years prior, I would not floated on the inner tube of that current, right? So if you just kind of, sometimes for me, visuals really help me. So if you visualize, you're on a little current, a nice little stream, just floating down the river. And then all of a sudden it gets crazy, right? And are you, holding on for dear life? Are you screaming? Are you jumping off and trying to go to the side? Or are you just kind of floating with it? And so I was able to float with the changes in, job loss. And all of a sudden, both my children had to be homeschooled and, really concerned about their mental health. My concern about my mother and my mother-in-law who, are up in years and were very susceptible to, the ramifications of COVID. So all these different things going on, just like it did for everybody. But I was able to maintain on that raft, right? Just floating along, while people around me were just succumbing to the fear and being riddled with anxiety and just completely up-leveled by this, right? I had to do a lot of self-analysis, and I realized, you know what, that would have been me. I would have been 10 times worse, in fact, than those folks because of the anxiety, etc. But I had created this lifestyle to support this, right? And so I felt like it was not only an opportunity, but almost a responsibility for me to step into risky territory, say, okay, I'm not going to go back to the safety of going back to the corporate world, the software career that I've known for over 20 years. I'm going to do some more training, and I'm going to start helping people manage their anxiety, take their power back. Because once you've taken your power back and liberated yourself, that freedom, I want that freedom for everybody. I'm very passionate about it. So that's what had me start my business. Doesn't mean that there weren't days that I didn't, have fear-based days. It doesn't. And that's why I say a baseline of inner peace, because we'll never all be there all the time, right? But to have that baseline where you're very resilient to quickly come back to it, where, okay, maybe you're falling off the raft a little bit, but you put your foot down and come back up so that you don't flip over. That's basically what happened to me personally. I saw around me every variation of the scale, right? But the majority of folks, I would say in general, as a population, most of us who had never had anxiety before, all of a sudden were presented with it maybe, or maybe it hadn't manifested itself before, but now all of a sudden it's manifesting in all these ways. So I feel like for me personally, it was a gift that in looking at the divine timing of me having learned how to harness and befriend my anxiety, harness the power of it, and take my power back from it prior to the pandemic hitting so that I could help other people do the same. And so, again, kind of a long-winded answer, but I would encourage just your audience in general. You can't underestimate the power of lifestyle changes because quick fixes, yeah, they're there. I mean, when I was first diagnosed with anxiety, it took me probably about 18 months to 2 years to even accept the diagnosis. I don't mean like a basic, like, oh yeah, throw me a pill over here and let me just get on my way. Cause I did that. Like I accepted it at that surface level, but a deep understanding of the root and how this not only was manifesting as the spinning monkey mind, but it was also manifesting as digestive issues, as rageful outbursts at my family, the spectrum, right? And so just don't underestimate the power of, small changes. So I had to start small. That's part of why my business is called Take 5. Because prior to that, probably about a decade ago, I did hit a wall. I was going 100 miles an hour. I never stopped. I had 2 kids under the age of 5. I had a career that I was traveling throughout the US for. My father was dying. I was trying to take care of him. And we had a bunch of other, little micro traumas within our world at that time. I was so busy taking care of everybody else, spinning all the plates, keeping it all going, that one day my body and mind and spirit all hit a wall. And I hit a wall. And so, the world will call that maybe a nervous breakdown. I'll call it a spiritual breakthrough because I see how it put me on the trajectory to where I am today. But I just encourage your audience, if you're finding yourself, go, go, go. And if you're finding yourself, maybe there's little whispers that your body's trying to tell you. Don't wait until it's yelling at you or throwing you down against a wall, because it takes longer to come back from it then. But there's so much more available to us now. And so I hope that answered your question, but that's a long way of speaking around coming back to that self-awareness and having presence and being able to really have that true self come out by having self-compassion and self-grace and knowing that you need as much care for yourself as much as you care for others, right?
Any question I ask you, I want you to take it any way you want, because
Okay.
because that is the purpose of this conversation today, where I love asking vague questions because that is my style. I want you to interpret the way you want to interpret it, because I like to think of coaching or just helping people, guide people as 2 ways. You can follow in my footsteps and not get the same result, or you can try to follow in my footsteps and understand that, okay, why did I not have the same results? It's 2 different ways of thinking. And if I ask you a question and I'm looking for a specific answer, that would be me trying to guide a different type of person, when really I want to guide you to your answer. I want you to find your own answer, because what you have to say is something that I might never think about. And every conversation we have here in coaching session might be similar, but it's always different. And so someone can listen to the same well-being coach over and over and over again, or we could talk to a money coach over and over and over again, or a relationship coach over and over and over again. The conversation is different because how they live life is different. Similar to how when you hit that wall, you had that trauma. How did that trauma affect you? You said that you touched something at a surface level where you might have taken some medication to help maybe ease you out, but then it wasn't the well-being fix that you really wanted. It wasn't creating that baseline that you were trying to create. I know many people who choose the easy out. They say, you know what, I want to make changes in my life. They don't want to do the hard work. And sometimes looking on the inside and really going through all that stuff that you have to go through in your brain, that unfamiliar truth or that hard truth, is going to be difficult for many people, because many people would rather just throw it in a corner, sweep it under the rug, or take a pill, take a medication. One of the things I don't advocate is people just going off and getting medication as the first thing. Like looking on the inside is typically my first go-to. Sometimes, I'm not saying it's not possible. Sometimes there are going to be people with chemical imbalances where a medication can help them understand who they are, how they're thinking a little bit better. But oftentimes, I think many people, we give ourselves, again, an easy outlet of, okay, if I take this, it's going to numb me, and then I can not focus. I work a lot with young men, and if they are on some type of antidepressant medication, they always tell me, I don't like how it makes me feel, as being the first thing, because typically parents will see that their kids, something wrong with them. It's nothing wrong with them. It's just that they have to go through this process. So they're on this medication. they tell me like they don't like how it makes them feel. And then they're maybe trying different medications and they're doing all this stuff, but they're not looking on the inside. They're just, again, it's just a cover up. How is that for you? I know for you, it's going to be a little bit different than the general populace because you saw it on the surface level, but then you also saw it on the deeper level.
Well, I think, I'll speak for my own experience, but also speak to, I think, a really important concept when we talk about medication and whether it's prescribed or whether it's off the shelf self medication. I'll kind of go into that. And that is compassion for self. So it's really easy for us to get really hard on ourselves when we have accepted, let's say, a diagnosis that came with a recommendation of pharmaceuticals. And so a lot of times, I think, as much as, there might be a point in your life where you're like, yeah, whatever, just give in. I want to get out of this pain. I've been there before. I get that. But then there's a lot of the in between where it's, I'm not hardcore, don't want to do any medicine, just going to do all holistic, or just give me a pill, give me the pills. I need the fix, right? I think most of us are somewhere in the middle. We want relief. We want hope. We want to just be able to make it through the day. And so those pharmaceuticals are a blessing for sure. They really helped me through a difficult period of my time in my life. But at the same time, to your point of it being a cover up or a Band-Aid, are we really addressing then the root cause of that pain that we are trying to take care of, that we're trying to possibly numb with it? My perception on pharmaceuticals is maybe different than the average bear because I was on them so young. I was on seizure medicine, anticonvulsants from a young age. And so having been on and off those my whole life and the side effects being so dramatic from those that I was a little bit, if I didn't have to be on them, I wouldn't have been on them. We'll put it that way, right? I really wanted to avoid them. But during the thick of some very heavy life, it didn't really matter what even the doctor was saying. It was just like, just allow me, when you're in the thick of the trauma, in the depths of despair or whatever you're going through, that is when oftentimes you don't even realize you're not present enough, conscious enough, because you're just in survival mode. Our bodies are beautiful things. They go into these modes of kind of suppressing a lot of the natural processes, right? To just numb out, essentially, to get through that difficult time period. And so I would just say, one, if any of your audience is on pharmaceuticals right now and you have feelings of, I don't really like the way it makes me feel, I want to get off of it. One, know that there's hope. There's always alternatives out there. But two, have compassion for yourself. It's okay. You made the best decision you could at the time that you were offered it. And maybe it's doing a great job for you. So I definitely, I had a conversation actually this morning about someone who's, elder in the 80s and dealing with some hypochondria type tendencies. And so quality of life at that age, kind of pushing out the concerns of maybe that becomes, a lot of times we don't want to go on medicine because it can, or pharmaceuticals because it can lead to, addictive behaviors, let's say, or you can become reliant on it. But there's a certain time where, quality of life is really important. And if that's at that point, not that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, you always can, right? But I feel like it's a very individualized decision and the trade-offs are always there. And there's opportunities to use all of these things. So I have written about my breath is stronger than my Ativan. Ativan's, a benzodiazepine, right? An emergency. But I found that my breath using specific breathing techniques can allow me to get to the same state that benzo can more efficiently, more cost effectively, and without the gnarly side effects of being hungover for a few days. And so that's the path that I chose, but it doesn't mean that path is for everyone. I'm definitely a proponent of trying to seek out these alternatives because of the fact that if you can step into something that's healing without having a side effect, there's no side effects of breath work. There's no side effects of meditation that are negative, right? At least in my experience and in my opinion. I would say, just self-compassion. I also want to just note that we are in a culture where it is driven by a lot of the influence of large corporations that are pushing drugs through doctors' offices. And in the medical system today, that's how our medical system evolved. And what we have today is how do we treat the symptom, not how do we get to the root cause and find out what dropped you into this fear-based lifestyle? What is the root cause? And so having an understanding and acceptance of this is the world that we live in. But there are alternatives. There's more functional medicine practitioners out there, and there's more opportunity to look at getting a more holistic approach. So I'll wrap that in a bow of just self-compassion is really important, and self-awareness. So those are the two main outcomes, say, out of the coaching work that I do. When people come to see me, they're not saying, okay, I want to be more present for my family. They might. In fact, I've had one person say that. But for the most part, it's I want to make this transformation, either career-wise or relationship-wise or health-wise. As we go on that journey together to get there, what happens is they have cultivated then these skills of presence. So starting with self-awareness, being aware of our own habits, being aware of our tendencies, learning how to listen to our bodies so that we don't have to allow it to go from a whisper to a yell, right? And then having that self-compassion. I think it can't be, lack of a better term, but self-compassion is so huge. And so with those two things, then you can drop into having that presence where you can be fully in it. If you're with your kids, fully with them, not thinking about work and all the, circus acts you have to do to keep the show running at work. When you're in the conference room with your team that you're leading, dropping the drama that you're going to come home to tonight because you're going through difficult family times, whatever it might be, is just learning how to have that presence to allow you to then live more fully, right?
For me, when I was going through everything, mindset shift and any type of trauma or type of turmoil I was giving myself, whether it be self-inflicted or an outside source inflicted, I had to learn how to be present. I had to learn how to be in the moment. When I was able to do that, then everything else started to fall in place. I was able to start meditating. I was able to start to look at my body more so than just, all right, I'm feeling something that's wrong. I'm just going to push through it. And I did push through it. I remember when I was training for a marathon, I had pulled a hamstring. It was an issue with it. It developed into sciatica because I didn't take care of it. I didn't choose to look at myself and say, oh, this needs to be fixed or this needs to be taken care of. I didn't have compassion for myself. I said, I'm still going to run the 5K. I'll be okay. Well, I did the 5K, but then I was in more pain after. It actually got to the point where I had to take Advil or like a leave, extra strength just to walk. Like I couldn't even get out of bed. And I'm only 23. So it's like, why am I going to be living my life this way? I'm going to be having to take a Advil every single day just to walk. And I remember me walking down the hallway. I was teaching at the time. So I was just walking down the hallway limping. I'm like, what is going on? And I was just thinking, I guess this is my life. But then I said, you know what? There has to be a fix. There has to be something that I can do. I got into yoga, where yoga did more than just take care of my sciatica. It helped me with my understanding my mind and how I should start to focus on things. It should be a systematic approach as where are you today? Because sometimes you're in that yoga class and you can do every single pose, not a problem. And I did Bikram yoga, so that's hot yoga. It's a challenge to be in that room because you're not only fighting with the poses, but you're fighting with the heat. And then your mind is in a constant state of fighting because it's not going to fight. It's going to be like fighting. Am I going to survive this? Every single day, no matter what, it was a battle with my mind. It was a battle with me. And I find that many people, they choose to be passive in that battle. So if they don't have to look on that inside, that, all of that muck that they have in their brain, they will not. It's easier. It's easy for the brain or easy for the person not to address the problems. That's why if someone has an issue, they will shut down emotionally. Okay, I'm just going to be silent. If someone is disrespecting them, they just shut down emotionally. They don't allow their voice to be heard. And so it might be a constant in their life. And eventually there's going to be a boiling point. Always tends to happen. There's going to be a point where you say enough's enough. And then you start to look at yourself. But now you're not just looking at yourself, but what needs to be fixed. You looked at everything that was broken because you didn't take action in the beginning immediately. And I find that the quicker you can take action, the quicker you can get to being healed or being in a better place. Sometimes we think life is about a journey that we have to go by ourselves, that we can't have help. We can't have someone guiding us along the way or giving us advice. And I mean, I'm a victim of that. When I had my big trauma in my life, I did it by myself. I went to the library. I just didn't go to work. And I was just trying to find the answers, reading personal development books. I didn't have a coach at the time. And I was just looking for the answers. I knew I could feel better. I knew that there was a way out of this depression that I was in. And it didn't have to be pills. But it took me months just to figure out an answer, or at least a path for me to go on. And when I started that path, I will say it was terrifying because I had to do things I never thought I would do, or things I didn't, to be honest, I didn't really want to do at the time. It was that fear aspect that was stopping me. It wasn't anxiety, it was fear. It was, I don't know what is around the corner. But I knew if I didn't take that leap of faith, my life wouldn't have changed. There's a difference between fear, anxiety. Fear might be one of those things that we give ourselves. If you're familiar with kids, kids are born with only two fears, actually. Born with the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. Everything else we give ourselves. So that fear of being accepted, we gave it to ourselves. That fear of losing our job, we gave it to ourselves. So fear is often self-inflicted. And then anxiety is us thinking about something, ruminating on something for a long term. But you have to ask yourself, does that fear help you? Does that anxiety help you? And I'm sure in some cases it might. I wanted to get your opinion on the difference between fear and anxiety and where it can be beneficial and where it could be dangerous.
Part of what you described in terms of, familiarity with young children or that phase of life, I'll just share, another personal example where, when I say my symptoms started really early in childhood, sometimes people cock an eyebrow like, really, what do you got to be anxious about, at 2 years old? Well, in my journey, I happened to have a nervous system dysfunction that resulted in me basically passing out and seizing. This started at the age of 2. And so I never knew when it was going to happen. And so there was, to your point, fear versus anxiety. There was a fear in me, pretty ingrained, pretty deeply from the time this first happened. When is it going to happen again? That then would dovetail into an anxiety loop, right? When is it going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. I have to be on alert. And so obviously I'm not thinking these, very adult thoughts as I'm sharing them right now. I can remember how it felt in the body. So, and I think, to kind of circle back on the loop of coaching and why we coach, right? We can read all the books in the world, all the self-help, spiritual books, mindset, everything, but it doesn't mean you're going to have that integration, right? So integration and embodiment, those are two really different things. And so the beauty of the coaching process, I think, is what we're there to do is extract that wisdom from our clients. They already know it. It's in there. It's physically in there. It's just sometimes suppressed a little bit or deep so that you have to, ask some questions to help extract that wisdom. How that then, to go back to the fear versus anxiety in my life, how that manifested then is it became almost a unconscious habit of that anxiety loop where I went from never knowing when the next episode was going to happen to then, as I aged, all the pressures of society and growing up and the stresses and doing all the stuff, keeping that productivity lifestyle, it became just a comfortable habit loop where, worrying about whether or not something's going to happen, that serves you in some way, right? Because it makes you feel like you have power in that moment to worry about it. But truly what it is, it's like asking for what you don't want, right? Is what worrying is. There's a really good book, actually, I just read, Unwinding Anxiety. That's the name of the book. So it parlays very similarly into what we look at within the teachings that I'm trained under, which are Ayurvedic teachings, which Ayurveda is the science of life, is what it translates to literally. It's a holistic, consciousness-based approach to health. And so all of my coaching is based on the foundation of Ayurveda, as well as a pillar of meditation holding everything up, right? To kind of unwind here and circle back, is I think it's fear. It exists in all of us, right? There's, if I saw a spider coming across the room right now, I'd go, I'd get scared, right? Maybe not a spider, but a snake. If a snake was in my office right now, guarantee you I'd scream and jump, right? And so notice that when I do that, where's my breath? It's really high in my chest. It's short. It's quick. What happens is that moment of fear, I can then, okay, it's a snake. I can, I can handle this, right? Get help, whatever. Or I can, panic and run out and run around and keep going, crazy, right? So just running around, worrying about that snake and then always thinking about, is there going to be another snake, right? And so that what happens is over habitual patterns that are truly unconscious, we can find ourselves in this cycle, right? And that level of anxiety that takes a while to unravel. So when I have my breath high and tighten the chest like that, that's something that I notice a lot within folks who come to me in my coaching practice, and that a lot of times we end up having breathing dysfunctions as a result of living a chronic high stress lifestyle. And so learning how to slow the breath, learning how to deepen the breath into the belly can allow you to step out of those. So very powerful. Probably everything I do in every aspect of what I either teach, because I'm a teacher as well as a coach. So, and I have to just take off one hat and put on the other, right? That whether I'm teaching mindfulness, let's say, in fact, I teach mindful wine tasting, mindful consumption habits, because that's another numbing piece, right? So we talked about the prescribed medication, but the way I self-medicated myself for a long time was through taking the edge off with a glass or two or three of wine at night. Now, I still enjoy wine. It's one of my passions, but I've learned how to mindfully, with intention, step into an experience of having a glass of wine or an experience of having my favorite meal in a total different way than it being an unconscious numbing. So fear and anxiety, I think we can get caught up into a fear-based lifestyle. And that's what I found myself in for many a year. And so making that transition from living a fear-based lifestyle to living from a love-based lifestyle was a huge leap for me. And I can tell your audience if they're finding that themselves in that space, there's hope. There's so much opportunity to take back your power. I don't know if you'd like to participate with me now, but maybe we can just do a quick breathing exercise. Maybe we can do a quick grounding and just offer your audience the opportunity to just experience it right now.
Sure.
Okay. So let's just take a moment. We're just going to start by just noticing how you're feeling in your body. Just noticing all the conversation we have, what it triggered, what these conversations sometimes trigger in us, or this thought process of what you're thinking of what's occurred in your life when you found yourself fear-based, the stresses you're under, etc. And we're just going to step out of that just for a few minutes. And so if you're driving, definitely keep your eyes open. But if you're folding the laundry, doing the dishes, maybe just put them to the side for a moment and just sit down. And I just want you to bring your awareness to the ground, whatever part of your body is touching the ground. So maybe it's your feet. Maybe you're seated in a chair and that chair is touching the ground. And maybe if you're driving in the car, it's those wheels making impact with the ground. And I invite you, if you're not driving, to close your eyes if you are in a space where you feel safe to do that. If you feel comfortable doing that, that's great. If not, maybe just do a little yawn and notice how as you yawn, it softens the eyes a little bit. And just notice that ground, just offering you that stability, that security, that safety. Now we'll just bring our awareness to the breath. Just maybe noticing the sensation of the breath in the body. And noticing, if you're seated, just the pressure of the weight of your body on whatever you're sitting on, a cushion, a chair, the floor. And we're just going to get a little space. So I just want you to slowly start to lengthen from about the tailbone to your belly button. And then your belly button to up to the center of the chest. Just notice if you can lengthen a little bit there. And as you do that, notice if your shoulders can soften a little bit more on the back. And just bring your awareness now to the top of the shoulders. And just notice, are you carrying any weight there? What if we release just a little bit of that, just for now? Just take an inhale and draw those shoulders up towards the ears. And then exhale, roll those shoulders back down. So think about a turtle, how he just pulls his head in the shell. Let's do that. So inhale. The head comes in the shell, shoulders go up, back. Let's just do that one more time. With this one, as you inhale, just feel some space being created. And as you exhale, just allow that weight to just be dropped off the back just for now. And just notice now the center of your chest, right in the heart center. And just allowing the breath to flow naturally. And just taking a moment of self-compassion here. And just accepting ourselves in this moment. And taking a slower than normal, deeper than normal breath now through the nostrils. And exhaling it out. And let's just do one more like that. Inhaling. And then exhaling. And just taking one more moment just to rest in this moment, in your wholeness, in your enoughness. Just resting in being. And when you're ready, you can allow the eyes to slowly come back open. And just notice if anything shifted for you.
All right. I want to thank you for walking us through that. That was amazing. I have been a yoga practitioner for over 10 years now. Every single time I go to yoga, it's always a journey, it's always an experience. And I always am happy that I go. Sometimes it's easy to say, I'm too busy today. I can't do it. But when you do it and you are leaving that yoga studio or yoga class, you say, I'm glad I went. Similar to the gym. I'm glad I went to the gym. We get something from working out the body mentally or physically, where we won't get it if we just continue to push through the day. And I find that many people are so busy. We don't have time for anything. I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to do yoga. I don't have time. When in reality, we all have time. We just have to make the time. And I think making the time for your well-being, for your betterment is so essential, because if you are just going to keep on pushing, burnout is going to be there. More anxiety is going to be there. Trauma is going to be there. Grief is going to be there. When you have the power right now to relinquish all those and to find peace, to find balance in the sense of where you are right now in the present. Because in the sense of balance, there might not be a true balance of work, life, love, happiness, but you can understand where you are on a consistent basis. Are you consistently happy? Are you consistently sad? Most people don't want to be consistently sad. So how can we elevate that? And I think some of the work that we do with yoga, meditation, it helps elevate that feeling of sadness into a state of being, I'm good, I'm well. And it's so powerful. I do want to thank you for sharing that moment with us. And I invite everyone to seek more and learn more about well-being, because it's not so much about making sure you're eating the right foods or that you're being compassionate to yourself. It's the whole picture. It's the entirety of who we are as people. We have so many emotions. We have so many twists and turns in our journey where we have to be understanding and reflective to that journey. There's a lot to well-being, and I know we can't get everything done in one episode, but I encourage everyone to, check out Maria, check out her website, and of course, begin the process of asking yourself the questions, am I being well? If I can from you, Maria, please share with us any last words and then tell how the audience can find you.
I'll just end with some gratitude. I really appreciate this opportunity, Michael, from you as well as your audience. And you can reach me through Maria at take5.health. That's my email address. My domain is the number 5.health. And I encourage you to take 5 each day. So that's part of what I offer is 5-minute stretch and breath breaks. So a little bit longer than the one we just did, but just wherever you're at, the power of your breath is so amazing. It's literally transformed my life, and it offers you such capacity for healing. And so I just encourage, if you don't have time for 5 minutes, take 5 slower than normal, deeper than normal breaths, and just notice if it can take you back to a moment of presence. So I have an online course coming out, Chakras and Chardonnay, which is a micro course that dives into learning truly about these energy centers, but also mindful consumption. So really learning how we can enjoy the things that we enjoy, but allowing them to be nectar to the body rather than poison by doing it mindfully with intention. And so I'm excited for that to come out, and a lot of other resources on my website as well. So if you sign up, subscribe at my website, you'll receive a stretch and breath break in your inbox, and you'll get one a month. And then there's lots of other opportunities for offerings there as well. But I'll just, again, say thank you and looking forward to connecting more in the future, Michael.
And I'll have all of those links in the description box below, so people can easily find you. They can easily sign up for any type of program you have, joining your newsletter, and then being a part of the movement of getting into a better being, of being well, and to understanding mindfulness and being mindful. Because I can attest, mindfulness and meditation has saved my life on so many different levels, and I'm sure it can do the same for you. So I want to thank you so much, Maria Mays, for coming on Coaching in Session. A great conversation.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. I would like to thank my guest, Maria Mays, for coming on Coaching in Session. As you can see, she's going to be a breath of fresh air, and literally a breath of fresh air, helping us being more mindful, helping us with our breath work, helping us understand that we can create something meaningful in our days, in our life, in our mind. And the idea of being mindful or of being well is going to be looking at many components. And for everyone, there's going to be a different situation. You might be looking for help in your relationships or career or healthy eating habits. Depending on where you are is going to be up to your journey. And this is where a coach comes in, because what I do as a coach is going to be similar to what Maria does, but it's also different. I help people with their mindset, the quality of their thinking. What are you thinking about? How does that make you feel? And then we begin to insert more positive ways of thinking. We give you more confidence, more courage. All that happens with action. When we're looking at our well-being, we need to first ask ourselves the question, where am I? Why am I here? Mindset too, but well-being is going to be the total compass of your body and your mind. So I encourage anyone who's looking for a better well-being to check out Maria. All her links will be in the description box below, and you can easily check her out and understand exactly where you are and begin the process. Because you might be in a place right now where you might not be completely satisfied. You might maybe be stressed, you have a lot on your shoulders, and you're trying to figure out how are you going to make it through. Well, sometimes we have to shed that weight. How can we shed the weight that we have given ourselves, all of the weight of the world that we're putting on our shoulders, if we just brushed it off and carried on with what truly matters? Because I think sometimes we give ourselves things that don't truly matter. We give ourselves ideas that are not helpful, and we give ourselves scenarios where we're not victorious. But I'm here to say that you can take back the power that you have relinquished, in the sense of your mind is powerful, your being is powerful. You just have to understand your power and then step into it. And one of the main reasons you're not in the place that you want to be today is because you either A, need to learn the skills, or B, you are your own worst enemy. So stop being your worst enemy and start to learn the skills in order for you to be in a better place in your life. It can start with this podcast, it can start with this conversation, or it can start with a conversation in the future. But begin that journey and ask for help. Don't be shy, don't be afraid. Don't be anxious of what's around the corner, because in reality, what's around the corner might be your best life. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, you can email me, coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone, take care.